Hello geographers, and welcome to this lesson from the Changing China unit. In today's lesson we're going to be introducing a variety of geographical features so that you are able to map some of the most important features of China. Let's begin. So here you can see our learning journey that we're going to be following for this unit, and this particular lesson is right at the start. What can we map about China? So if you haven't done so already, make sure you've got a pen, a ruler and something to write on. And if you'd like to write down today's title, What Can We Map About China? And then alongside that, make sure you write down today's date. So in a moment, I'm going to show you some images of China. For each one, you're going to try and write a short question and or a description about the image. There'll be an example that's done for you, which I'm going to go through with you in just a moment. What I really want you to try and think about is, what do the images reveal to you about China? And what sort of questions have you got about China as a country, just to try and get you thinking about this unit overall. So let's show you the activity you're going to be doing. So on your screen you can see a variety of images of China. So we're just going to have a look at the one in the top left-hand corner to begin with, and you can see it's very much an image that shows China's countryside. So a really good question that you could start with is to kind of focus in on those fields that you can see there, and they're kind of separated by hedges. Now my question would be something along the lines of, well, what's being farmed here? Because it's obviously very good for farming. There's a lot of good farming fields there. So I'd love to know what they're farming. Alternatively, or if you're feeling brave, you could do this as well, is to write a short description of the image. So in this example, you can see it's written, on the left is a wide river with steep slopes down to the bank in the background. On the right, there's a flat, cultivated land. Cultivated just simply means that it's being used for agriculture, marked by hedges and a linear settlement along a road parallel to the river. Linear means effectively the buildings are following the line of the road in this case. Okay, so you can see the example there. I'd like you to try and do the same sort of thing with the remaining three images. And then really think carefully about, what does that reveal to you about China? So pause the video and have a go at this first task. Okay. So hopefully you've had a good go at that activity and really started to think about the different sorts of landscape that we might find about China. And I wonder if you were starting to think that actually China is very much a land of contrasts. We've got bustling cities and rural villages. And even within those environments, there's huge contrasts. So in the huge cities that we've got, there are a variety of modern skyscrapers and busy streets. And we've also got some incredibly historic buildings that link back to a past of emperors and warriors. In the villages, you'll find that life is very much tied to the land and the cultivated land that we saw the image of before, and also linked to the rivers as a way of transporting produce through the country. Within the cities as well, we've got a contrast because we've got people eating in international restaurants, but they're also alongside our traditional street markets. And there's a massive contrast in terms of things like transport as well. Some people will get around on old bicycles. Some people will travel on high-speed railways. And what's really interesting about China is the political side of how it's run. It's very much classed as a communist country, but the economy is largely capitalist, and that's something we'll revisit again on a later lesson. In this lesson, though, we're going to be mapping out some of the main characteristics of this fascinating country. So the first thing I'd like to do before we get onto the main activity is to really have a think about what a good map might look like, because you're going to have a go at creating your own map. So the first thing I'd like you to think about, and if you've got somebody working alongside you, you could perhaps do this with them, is you're going to list all the things that might be needed on a map. Okay? You should also try and think about how it should be presented. And I'd like you to try and come up with 5 different pieces of criteria that we can share. And you're going to be using this later to judge your own maps and to ensure that they are the best possible map that you can create. So take a moment now and pause the video and come up with your 5 pieces of criteria of what a good map should look like. Okay, so hopefully you've had a good go at coming up with your criteria, and I'm sure you've got at least 5 different pieces of criteria, maybe even more. So I'd like you to compare them with this list. So one of the first things a map will need is a title. What does the map actually show? Without that, it's a little bit tricky to understand it. Secondly, and this links down to the 4th point as well, if your map is going to be easy to understand, it's going to need some sort of key, particularly if you're trying to use colour and you're trying to use symbols to try and make it much clearer and less cluttered. The other thing you want to have on your map are place names. And one thing you could do, if it's a country, you might want to have quite bold lettering. Or maybe you want to use capital letters. Or maybe you'd like to underline places of interest. So really think about the best presentation for the different place names you're going to be including. Water features are often found on maps, and these are often shown with blue lines or blue shading. Think about how clearly you're writing on your map. And I wonder if you've got any others on your criteria as well that you could add to this list. So I'm going to go through your main task next. Your main task will be to create your own map of China. Now, it's not just going to be a straightforward thing of copying a map from an atlas. That would be boring. So instead, I'm going to give you a variety of different features, and I want you to be really creative in how you're going to present those on your map. Okay, and obviously don't forget your original criteria. There needs to at least be a title and a key. Now, don't be overwhelmed by what I'm going to be showing you, because part of the process of the work that you're going to do is to really think about what information is going to be important and what information you're not going to include as well. Okay, so here's a copy of the outline map. Obviously, if you don't have a copy of this sheet, you might want to draw your own version, perhaps freehand. And you can see on there, there's space already for you to put your title and key. So the yellow sort of shaded area that we've got there shows the country of China. And then around that, the grey shaded area is showing you surrounding countries. So you might want to label some of those. The blue areas are showing the sea, and also the blue lines you've got on there are some of the rivers as well. So in terms of what you're going to try and add, this is the information you're going to refer to. Now you can see there's a lot here, and I am definitely not expecting you to include everything. However, I would like you to try and make some really crucial decisions about what might be important to include on the map. So some things might be obvious. You might want to locate certain major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and those sorts of areas. And it might be perhaps relevant for you to include certain ecosystems, for instance, the Gobi Desert. Some of the things on here are probably quite important, but you might have to think really carefully about how you're going to show that on your map. So for instance, rice is the staple food in China, or China is run by the Communist Party. Are those bits of information that you'd like to include? And if so, how might you do that? Or are they bits of information that actually on this occasion you don't think is necessary? But it's the decisions you need to make. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that map very quickly. So this is the map you're going to try and present your information on. And this is the information you're going to try and include. So you'd probably like to pause the video there and then come back once you're completed. Okay, so hopefully you've had opportunity there to create your maps. You've maybe spent anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes on it at least, and hopefully you've used your atlases to ensure that you're as accurate as possible in terms of locating those different features. Okay, so I'd like you to now take a moment to reflect on the maps that you've created and really think about what you've done well on those maps, But equally, what sort of things could you do to improve? Now, to help you with this, I want you to go back to that original list of criteria that we generated at the start of the lesson. And I'd like you to assess your maps according to that criteria. So go through and check, have you included each of those key features? If you haven't, think carefully why you haven't. Have you simply run out of time? Or did you make the decision not to include those on purpose? And then finally, I'd like you to take a few minutes to do what you can to improve your map. And then we're going to leave the lesson there, and I can't wait to see you again. Bye for now.